Thank you for calling this hearing today. As of last month, more than 300 Americans had lost their lives to the hurricanes. Millions of people across the Southeast have had their lives uprooted, their families displaced, and their communities ravaged by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Friends of my family were forced from their home in Asheville, North Carolina, and they came to stay with us in Maryland for several weeks following this nightmare. And we closely tracked the recovery effort, which has been unceasing and determined, even though aid was still too slow in getting into some communities. FEMA is America's lifeline in disasters like these, coordinating rapid response and recovery efforts with state and local first responders and rescue agencies. In these hurricanes, FEMA deployed swiftly, providing survivors with temporary shelter, debris removal, and other emergency measures, including the $750 for serious needs assistance for individuals to get items like food, water, baby formula, and medicine. FEMA's disaster work is not conducted by a unitary force of full-time federal government employees, but rather a dynamic team of emergency responders and agencies drawn from across the country, which includes federal, state, and local workers, full-time and part-time employees, and private contractors. Two of my own constituents, Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service captains Josh Kurland and Dave Hutchinson, went south with rescue teams to help communities hit by Hurricane Helene. FEMA workers from around America help their fellow Americans get back on their feet after a disaster like this. Now, even in the heat of the presidential election, Mr. Chairman, FEMA's response won high praise from leaders across the political spectrum. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin said, quote, "I'm incredibly appreciative of the rapid response and the cooperation from the team at FEMA." Florida Governor DeSantis said, quote, "Everything we've asked for from President Biden, he has approved." And our Florida colleague, Congresswoman Luna, said, "As I'm seeing, FEMA has been very helpful, and I've been in direct communication with them, and they're absolutely going to assist because President Biden has told them to do so." So we could be here today celebrating the workforce of 22,000 FEMA workers, but instead we're invited to focus on one so-called intermittent employee in Florida whose team encountered what she called political hostility while canvassing door-to-door for FEMA in Florida. Thereupon, as I understand it, she made the judgment that her workers were unsafe, and she issued the order to her team not to go to any more houses in the neighborhood where there were Trump signs planted in the yard. This was a bad mistake, legally and constitutionally, which violated the core mission of FEMA and every federal agency to work on behalf of all Americans. It's plainly wrong and divisive to use a presidential campaign lawn sign as a proxy for someone's dangerousness. The director of FEMA, who's with us today, Ms. Criswell, properly acted immediately within 36 hours of learning of the incident because this action was an egregious departure from the norms of nonpartisanship which must govern the conduct and the work of the federal workforce. Federal workers have a duty to serve all Americans regardless of their political identification. FEMA's prompt and unequivocal personnel action in this case is powerful evidence that the civil service system is working, not only to deliver quality public service, but also to correct employee errors and ensure that the people whose homes were skipped, as in this case, receive outreach and assistance. And I understand that there were 20 homes that were skipped and then they were immediately addressed afterwards, but I want to ask about that. Now, none of this is to deny for a moment that in recent months, FEMA aid workers have been forced to work under a cloud of propaganda and lies concocted to erode public trust in FEMA. Because of this disinformation, many victims of hurricanes have rejected federal assistance, and others have even harassed and threatened FEMA workers. As Republican Congressman Chuck Edwards, who represents Asheville, North Carolina, said, all the misinformation has been, quote, not just unhelpful, but it's been harmful. I agree with my Republican colleagues and Administrator Criswell. Federal agencies must serve all Americans, and that means a federal workforce of nonpartisan professionals hired based on competence and merit. What's true of FEMA canvassers is, of course, true of the rest of the government. We need government for all the people, regardless of political viewpoint. President-elect Trump has promised to be a president for all Americans, and I hope he delivers on that. And if he falls short of it, I trust all my colleagues will hold him to it. In his first administration, President Trump all too often deliberately directed disaster aid based on the party politics of local leadership and past electoral performance, not the needs of the community and disaster survivors. In 2017, his administration denied 99% of the aid that North Carolina's Democratic governor requested as part of cleanup efforts after Hurricane Matthew. Also in 2017, after Hurricane Maria, President Trump blocked the full release of emergency assistance to Puerto Rico that was appropriated by us in Congress due to his unfounded belief that the destruction and death toll had been inflated to make him look bad. In 2018, after California suffered the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in its history, President Trump initially refused to approve disaster aid because of the state's liberal Democratic leanings. He reportedly later changed his mind after his staff provided him data showing that there were more Trump voters in Orange County, California, than there were in the entire state of Iowa. Now is the right time for all of us, Mr. Chairman, and I mean this, for all of us to agree that nobody in public office, no matter how high nor how low, should play partisan politics with disaster relief in the age of climate change. Thank you for convening today's hearing so we can stand together and reaffirm our commitment to the idea that government exists to serve all of our citizens and to commend the devoted federal workers who work day in and day out to serve all of our people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.